Be seated, everyone. We're ready to proceed. That last question asked by Mr. Bilinkas was, after some discussion, withdrawn by Mr. Bilinkas. Mr. Bilinkas, do you have any other questions for this witness?
Just a few, Judge.
Go ahead, sir.
Corporal, so as far as your involvement on that day, the only information you got with respect to who the shooter was from Robert Goodwin, correct?
Yes.
And the only information as to where exactly the gun was came from Robert Goodwin also.
Yes, that's correct.
He knew exactly where the gun was, correct?
He said underneath or under him, something to that effect.
I have nothing further.
All right, redirect.
Corporal, was the gun exactly where Robert Goodwin said it was? Underneath
Yes,
the
it's
defendant?
underneath Mr. Barisone.
No further questions, Judge.
All right, you may step down. Thank you, Corporal. Please don't discuss your testimony with any other witnesses in the case. There is a chance you
Yes,
may
sir.
be called back as a witness if something else arises during the trial. Very good. Thank you, sir. You're free to go. Mr. Schellhorn, call your next witness, please.
Thank you, Judge. The state will call Officer John Wurtemberg.
Good afternoon, officer. Please remain standing. Place your left hand on the Bible there on the witness stand. Raise your right hand. Please listen to my court clerk.
Do you swear in the presence of Almighty God that the testimony you give to this court regarding this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
John Wurtemberg, W-U-R-T-E-M as in Mike, B-E-R-G.
Thank you.
Have a seat, officer. Please keep your voice up nice and loud. If you don't understand a question posed by counsel, please indicate that.
Thanks.
And if you hear an objection during the course of your testimony or a question, please don't answer the question. Stop your testifying until I rule on the objection. All right? Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Schellhorn, you're a witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, can you please introduce yourself to the jury and tell them where you work?
Officer John Wurtemberg, Washington Township Police Department, Morris County.
And approximately how long have you worked for the Washington Township Police Department?
21 years.
Where are you currently assigned with the Washington Township Police Department?
I'm the school resource officer. I work at the Long Valley Middle School.
Can you explain for the members of the jury who don't know what a school resource officer is, what that entails?
Day-to-day, safety and security, mentoring the students, assisting teachers, administrators, overseeing the drills, fire drills, active shooter drills. Just a resource, just for anybody, including parents as well.
Approximately how long have you been the Washington Township SRO in that position?
I'm in my 4th year, I believe.
Drawing your attention back to August 7th, 2019, were you in that position at that time?
I was. It was summertime, but I was still considered a school resource officer.
So my follow-up question is, what does an SRO do in Washington Township during the summer?
Summertime, it varies, more of a utility. I've been in the Detective Bureau previously. I've been in patrol. I assist traffic. So kind of wherever they need me through the summer is where I go for the day.
Now, with respect to August 7th, 2019 in particular, do you recall if you were working that day?
I was.
And what were you doing that day in the early afternoon?
I was actually the role of the school resource officer. School was supposed to start late August, and I was meeting with the superintendent, Long Valley Middle School principal, and vice principal, just for the upcoming year, safety stuff, security stuff. So I was actually at the middle school when that call came across the radio.
Now, do you recall how you were dressed that day?
Class B uniform, summer, which is this uniform minus the tie and short sleeves.
Which, that uniform, the Class B, looks like it has patches on both shoulders as well as a badge.
Yes.
Now, you indicated that on that day you were at the school when there was a call. Can you tell the jury what your impression of that dispatch call was?
I was in a meeting. I had my radio on. Morris County Dispatch sends out what we call tones. So it's an alarm to let us know it's a big call. So I heard the tones, so I knew to kind of clear the air and listen. And over the air, they informed that there was an active shooter at 411 West Mill Road.
Based on the nature of that call, what did you do?
I immediately left. I entered my vehicle and headed west towards 411. I was at 51 West Mill, so I was a couple miles from that location.
Now, the vehicle that you were driving that day, can you tell the jury about that?
So, because my position was kind of a fill-in that day, so I had the very last vehicle that was available. It was kind of stripped down, it wasn't marked, no MVR, no equipment in it. Lights and sirens I did have, but it was just an extra vehicle, as the primary officers had the vehicles so they could do their job.
Had you ever been to 411 West Mill Road before?
Years ago, 15, 18 years ago.
What did you know was at 411 West Mill Road?
I knew it was a horse farm.
Did it have any sort of a name?
There used to be a sign on West Mill, it said Hawthorne Hill.
Based on that prior, what was the nature of the prior call where you were there 15 or 20 years before?
Emergency call, squad call, I believe. I don't know if it was a student or a camp or somebody fell off a horse. It was a medical call.
And so based on that prior medical call, had you been onto the property to assist with that call?
Yes.
What was your understanding of the general layout of the property?
I knew there was a front house. I knew there was a long driveway that led to the barn stable area.
Now, when you went there on August 7th, 2019, were there any other police officers on scene when you arrived?
Yes, Corporal Heymer.
And do you recall, did you see him, his vehicle, or something else?
I saw his vehicle.
Do you recall where you saw his vehicle?
I made a left as I was traveling west. I made a left onto the driveway, and 50 feet maybe, 25 feet, I saw his vehicle straight ahead of me
On the driveway?
on the driveway.
Was there anything that you took note of about the position or the state of his vehicle?
I could see it was unoccupied. It was just past a smaller driveway that went off to the left of the major driveway.
When you saw that vehicle there, what did you do?
I pulled up behind him, or behind his vehicle. I got out. I cautiously headed to the house, trying to listen. I couldn't see. My view was obstructed from a large pickup truck that was to the left.
So at that point, when you got out of your car, after seeing Corporal Heymer's car, did you see anybody?
I did not.
But you indicated that you went in the direction of the back of the house.
Yes,
Did you go past or around or near that pickup truck?
I did.
At some point, did you see people?
I did, as soon as I rounded the front of that vehicle.
At this point, did you have your firearm out?
I did not.
Now, what did you see, or can you tell the jury what you saw when you came around the pickup truck?
I saw Corporal Heymer. He was kneeling over a body who, there was a lot of blood everywhere. He appeared to be holding the chest. I assume that's where the wounds were. He had a gun out. He was pointing at somebody laying on their face. I asked him what he needed. He informed me he needed medical bag.
Now, let me break that down. Did you know who any of these people were when you arrived on scene?
I did not.
During the course of the investigation and the follow-up, did you come to find out who they were?
I did.
With respect to the individual that Corporal Heymer was giving medical treatment to, was that a man or a woman?
A woman.
And did you come to find out who that woman was?
I did.
Can you tell the jury who that was?
That was Lauren Canarak.
You also indicated that Corporal Heymer had his gun out and there was another person there. Was that a man or a woman?
It was a man.
And did you come to find out who that man was?
I did.
Who was that?
Mr. Barisone?
Do you see the individual that you saw, that you're identifying as Mr. Barisone here in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you identify him for the record by an article of clothing that he's wearing?
White shirt, yellow tie.
Identifying the defendant, Mr. Barisone, for the record.
Were there any other people in the area at that time?
There was an individual off to my right, chasing a small dog around.
And was that a man or a woman?
There was a man.
Did you come during the course of the investigation to find out who that man was?
I did.
Who was that?
Mr. Goodwin?
Now, you indicated that your first approach into the scene, Corporal Heymer told you that he needed medical equipment.
Yes.
What did you do?
So I informed him that I did not have my regular vehicle and that I didn't have any equipment in that vehicle.
Did you end up getting medical equipment from somewhere else?
I did. Corporal Heymer instructed me that he had those items in his car, so I went to his patrol vehicle and retrieved what we call a go bag.
What's a go bag?
It has chest seals, tourniquets. It's basically a stop the bleed type bag.
Did you go get that equipment?
I did.
And what did you do with it?
I came back to him and dropped it next to him and proceeded to assist him handcuff Mr. Barisone.
Do you recall whose handcuffs you used?
Mine,
And do you recall where the defendant was handcuffed?
to his back, behind him.
Had you ever met the defendant before?
No,
During the course of this going on, did any other officers arrive on scene?
yes, as we were handcuffing Mr. Barisone, Officer Hensley arrived on scene.
And what did you do after you were done assisting with handcuffing the defendant?
I turned my attention to Mr. Goodwin.
And do you recall where he was?
He was, again, still off to the right of us, kind of like in an open area of the yard, again, chasing the dog around.
Did you see at any point, did you have a chance to make observations of the dog?
I did.
What was your impression of the dog?
Small, noisy dog.
And I guess, is it fair to say, if you said Mr. Goodwin was trying to get it, was it running around?
He was excited. Yeah, he was having a hard time grabbing it.
Did he ultimately get the dog?
He did.
And do you know what happened to the dog?
I instructed him to put it inside. I knew that medical personnel and a whole bunch of other people were going to arrive on scene, so it was another distraction that I didn't think we needed.
Did you see where Mr. Goodwin took the dog?
He put it just inside the door of the back steps.
Did you lose sight of him at any point?
I did not.
After Mr. Goodwin put the dog inside, where did he go?
He came back out, and I went to have a conversation with him.
What would you describe his demeanor to be?
After he was not focusing on the dog any longer, he kind of, I think, realized what was going on. He got a little excited. He was concerned, stressed.
Did you do anything with respect to him?
I did. I handcuffed him for his safety and everybody else's safety.
And do you recall approximately where that was in the area?
So by the time I handcuffed him, more officers arrived on scene. I did handcuff him in between a patrol vehicle and there was a pile of gravel.
Judge, at this point, I'd like to display S-389, which has already been entered into evidence.
Yes, go ahead. All right, for the record, S-389, which is in evidence, is being displayed on TV monitors in the courtroom for the jury.
Officer Wurtemberg, you've seen S-389 before?
Yes,
What is S-389 a diagram of?
the residence and the area behind it.
So I'd just like to go back and discuss with you where certain things happened that you described. You indicated when you pulled onto scene, you saw Corporal Heymer's car.
Yes,
And Judge, if I could approach?
Yes.
This is not perfect, but it's a pointer. So I'm gonna ask if you could use that, if I ask you where certain things are. Judge, I'm not entirely positive that the jurors in the gallery will be able to see that, but I would ask after we do it the first time, if we could ask.
You could do it over there, too.
Could he come down and do it?
Yep. Why don't you come down in
Also,
here,
you come
officer,
down.
if you would? Just be careful with that laser pointer. Don't shine it in
Absolutely,
anyone's eyes.
absolutely. Thank you.
All right.
You could stand right there, next to that screen, and point with your hand on that screen, and you can use the pointer on the other screen. Just trying to make sure, I wanna make sure these jurors can see you too. So, maybe you could stand on this side. Okay. I'm gonna sit down so I'm not in the way.
All right.
Thank you.
Is there a question posed to the officer?
No, Judge, I'm gonna
All
ask
right,
the
go ahead.
officer if he could point out, now that he has a pointer and he's next to this screen, if he could point out where he approximately observed Officer Heymer's car. So it looks like you're indicating just almost to the top left of where that utility box is, on the main driveway.
Yes.
Where did, I'm not sure this will work, Judge.
No. It looks like it faded out already.
It's out.
No batteries.
Well, we gave it a try.
All right.
So, officer, if you could just go over and point out to the jury on the screen over here.
Corporal Heimer's vehicle was approximately here.
Thank you. And Judge, it did appear that the jurors in the gallery could see, but if you could just ask if they were blocked.
Yes. Did any of the jurors have trouble seeing where the officer indicated? Yeah, I thought this juror would. All right, can you just go over to that screen so that juror, that's juror number 12.
And then before I have you sit down, Officer Wurtemberg, if you could stay on that screen and you could just point out for these jurors in the gallery the approximate area where you were dealing with Mr. Goodwin when you indicated that you first placed him in handcuffs.
Right here in front of this gravel pile.
And if you could also show on the other screen so that the jurors in the box can see. And you're indicating on the driveway just to the left of the gravel pile as it's depicted on this diagram?
Yes.
All right, thank you. If you can have a seat. Now, you indicated, officer, that at the time that you placed Mr. Goodwin in handcuffs, that there were other police vehicles arriving on scene?
Yes.
And I think you indicated that one of those vehicles had pulled into the driveway?
Yes.
And that was approximately the same area where you just pointed out, you said, where you put the handcuffs on Mr. Goodwin.
Correct.
Do you know where the firearm was, or did you know there was a firearm involved?
I did.
Did you know where the firearm was at this point?
I did not.
At some point, did you locate it?
I did.
Can you describe for the jury where you located it?
So, as I was handcuffing Mr. Goodwin, I did notice it in that same area off to the right of the gravel pile.
And are you indicating right based on the diagram or right based on when you would enter into the driveway?
Based on the diagram. So, actually, at the bottom of the screen, at the bottom of that gravel pile. So if I'm facing the gravel pile, it's to my right.
Now, what did you observe the handgun to look like?
It was black with pink on it.
Can you, at that point, did you recover the firearm?
I did.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about when you recovered it? What you did?
I saw that the chamber was open, so I believed it to be empty. But as a protocol, I looked into the chamber and didn't see a round in it. The clip was also missing, so I knew that it was safe to handle. And I held it temporarily, trying to figure out a safe spot to put it, as I knew medical and everybody else that needed to come to the scene was coming. And I just didn't want a gun laying out in the middle of the parking lot.
Officer, in front of you, there should be a box that's marked S-177. Can you open that box? Do you recognize what's inside the box?
I do.
What is it?
That is the gun that I recovered that day.
And does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition as when you recovered it?
The slide is open, however, it did not have the safety locks on it.
Now, if you could just hold that up, and if you need to stand up so these folks in the back could see where you're pointing to, but if you could just stand up and hold it up and indicate, you had said something about the slide and the position of the slide. If you could just point that out for the jury, what you're talking about.
So this area here, And with this open, it indicates to me that there's not a round charged.
And in spite of it having the safety zip ties and locks and everything on it right now, that is the same position the slide was in when you saw it?
Yes,
Now, you indicated that you picked it up and you secured it until you could find a safe place to keep it?
correct.
Put it? Ultimately, where did you put that gun?
In the back of a patrol vehicle.
And where was that patrol vehicle parked?
It was parked in front, it was parked up to the gravel pile, facing the gravel pile.
Do you know who had driven that vehicle?
I believe Corporal Fellini.
Judge, at this point, I'd like to move into evidence S-230 and S-231, two photographs. I don't believe there's any objection.
Any objection, Mr. Bilinkas, to 230 and 231?
No.
All right, those items will be admitted into evidence.
Officer, I'm first going to draw your attention to S-230 that's on the two big screens here. What is that a picture of?
The rear of one of our patrol vehicles.
And is that the same patrol vehicle you were just discussing that was parked in the driveway facing into where the gravel pile was?
Yes.
Is there anything different about when this picture was taken that night and from the time when you secured the gun inside the car?
The evidence markers were not there.
And you're indicating on the left-hand side in the background?
Yes, well, the number 3 as well, that was not there. It had not been deemed a crime scene yet.
Now, can you tell the jury what is in the back of the patrol car that you put there?
The black and pink handgun.
And is that on the, I guess, the floor of the back there?
Yes.
I'm next going to draw your attention to S-230, 231, excuse me. Is that the same vehicle, excuse me, the same handgun that you placed in the back of the vehicle?
Yes.
And that's just a close-up?
Yes.
At the time when you placed the gun there, had you done anything to manipulate it or change the position of the slide?
No.
Was that magazine in the back of the car when you put the gun there?
Yes.
Did you see who put that there?
No.
Now, you mentioned that other officers arrived. Did you see other officers giving medical attention to Lauren Kenrick?
I did.
Are you aware whether Mr. Goodwin received any medical attention from the EMTs on scene?
I did not see that.
Do you know whether or not the defendant received any medical treatment?
I did not see that either.
After you assisted Corporal Heymer with handcuffing the defendant, did you have a chance to make any observations of what he looked like?
I saw some blood. There was just blood in the area in front of both parties.
Judge, if I could just have a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few final questions for you, officer. Did you have any other part in the investigation there at the scene at the farmhouse?
I did.
What was that?
So shortly after securing the handgun in the back of the vehicle, I was asked to help clear the house with 3 other officers for any potential other dangers or injured parties inside.
After doing that, were you given another assignment?
I was.
What was that?
I was escorted by Morris County Prosecutor's Office to go up to the barn and help secure it, as they informed me a search warrant was being written.
Judge, I don't think I have any further questions for Officer Wurtemberg at this time.
All right, very well. Cross-examination, Mr. Bilinkas?
Thank you, Judge. Officer Isn't it a fact that when you arrived on the scene as the second person, Michael Barisone was partially conscious?
Yes,
That's what you put in your report, correct?
incoherent is the word I used.
Partially conscious and incoherent, correct?
Yes,
And when you arrived, Heymer was dealing with both cataract and my client, Michael Barisone,
Ye-
correct?
yes,
Robert Goodwin was running around the yard, correct?
yes.
How long was he running around the yard for?
After you arrived,
After you
obviously.
arrived?
I'm not sure.
Minutes,
Minutes?
chasing after a dog?
Yes.
When you say chasing, where exactly was he chasing the dog?
There was a cleared section just past the gravel pile in between the house. That driveway, the gravel driveway stops, and then it goes into grass. So away from us, but it was kind of off to the side yard of the house. Still behind the house, but off to the side.
Okay. And he was having problems getting a hold of that dog?
It seemed it. Again, I wasn't completely focused on him at the moment, as we had the other tasks at hand, but it seemed as though the dog wasn't listening to him.
Now, at some point in time, he's told to go inside the house, correct?
I told him to get the dog out of the area, yes.
Okay, and he basically picks up the dogs and goes inside the farmhouse, correct?
He didn't go completely inside the house. He opened the door and he put the dog in. He never completely crossed the threshold. He was able to put the dog down.
Do you recall saying in your report, as Mr. Goodwin ran back out of the residence,
Mr. Bilinkas, you reading from his report?
yes,
Shouldn't you show him the report?
I'm asking him a question if he recalls, Mr.
Well, you didn't ask him if he recalled it.
I'll rephrase my question. Do you recall Mr. Goodwin running back out of the residence and becoming emotional?
I remember him coming back down the steps, yes.
Steps, not residence.
He was partially in the residence, so he partially came out of the residence.
Did you search Robert Goodwin at any time?
I did not.
Judge, may I approach the witness to show him a picture, or I can put it on the Elmo?
Is it in evidence?
No, I'm gonna ask him if he recognizes.
All right, yes. To have him identify the photograph.
I'm showing you what has been marked D800/92, and ask you if you recognize what's depicted on this.
I've never seen that photo before.
Did you see the dog in the photo before?
Not from that angle. I don't recognize the dog like that.
Okay. Now, while you were there, at any point in time, did you see the dog try to attack Corporal Heymer?
No, I did not.
Now, you indicated that after the area was secured, you took part in securing the entire residence, correct, in the scene?
Just the residence, not the scene. With 3 other officers, we actually went into the house.
Okay, and was the Morris County Prosecutor's Office at the scene at that point while you were there?
I don't recall. There was a lot of people.
Were any assistant prosecutors there
I don't
while you were there?
Eventually, I don't know exactly when everybody arrived.
I'm not referring to when. At any point in time where you were at the crime scene, did the Morris County Prosecutor, specifically assistant prosecutors, show up at the scene?
I don't remember. Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, any redirect?
No, Judge.
All right, thank you. You may step down, sir. Please don't discuss the case with anyone. All right?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Thank you.
very good. All right, Mr. Schellhorn, call your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the state will call Detective Brian Bailey.
Detective Bailey?
Hi, Detective. Please remain standing for a moment. Place your left hand on the Bible on the witness stand. Raise your right hand, and please listen to my court clerk as she administers an oath.
Do you swear in the presence of Almighty God that the testimony you give to this court regarding this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Detective Brian Bailey, B-A-I-L-E-Y.
Thank you.
Have a seat, please. Detective, please keep your voice up nice and loud. If you don't understand a question that is posed to you, please don't answer it. Just indicate you don't understand the question, and I'll make sure counsel rephrases it.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Detective, can you please introduce yourself to the jury and tell them where you currently work?
My name is Detective Brian Bailey. I currently work for the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office, and I'm assigned to the Crime Scene Investigation and Fire Investigation Unit.
And approximately how long have you worked for the Somerset County Prosecutor's Office?
Since August of 2021.
Where did you work before that?
Previously with the Morris County Sheriff's Office.
And what was your most current assignment with the Morris County Sheriff's Office?
I was assigned to the Crime Scene Investigation Section.
Did you also work for any other units or sections with the Sheriff's Office, the Morris County Sheriff's Office, when you worked there?
Prior to me joining the Bureau of Law Enforcement, I was with the Bureau of Corrections with the Morris County Sheriff's Office. I did 2 years at the jail.
And I apologize if you said this and I missed it, but approximately how long were you with the Crime Scene Investigation Section?
Approximately 4.5 years.
Do you have any prior training in crime scene and processing crime scene?
Yes.
Do you have any training in ballistics?
Yes.
Have you ever taught any courses related to crime scene processing?
Yes.
What specifically?
I teach crime scene photography for the New Jersey State Police Crime Scene Investigation course.
All right, I want to draw your attention back to August 7th of 2019. You were employed by the Morris County Sheriff's Office at that time?
Yes.
And you've mentioned the crime scene investigation section several times. Can you tell the members of the jury basically what the roles and responsibility of that unit would be?
Yes. As a crime scene detective, our basic responsibilities are to respond to numerous different crime scenes throughout Morris County. We are tasked with photographing and documenting the crime scene, whether it's through photographs, through a diagram, could potentially even be a 3D diagram. Also with collecting evidence, documenting where the evidence is, collecting it, and processing the evidence.
How does the Morris County Sheriff's Office CSI unit typically become involved in an investigation?
Typically, they are called out by either the town where the crime or incident could have occurred, or by the prosecutor's office.
Now, with respect to August 7th, 2019, were you involved in an investigation that occurred in Washington Township?
Yes.
And did your involvement in that investigation happen differently than the process you just described?
Yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury how you came involved with that investigation?
That day, I was on my way to work at approximately 2 o'clock. While on my way to work, I live in a close neighboring town. An alert came across the radio broadcast, basically stating there was an active shooter in Washington Township. I then responded to the scene, got the address through the comm center, responded directly to the scene as a law enforcement officer.
When you say you responded as a law enforcement officer, are you a law enforcement officer when you work in the crime scene investigation unit?
Yes.
And so what was different about the way you were responding on that day versus when you would respond as a crime scene investigating detective?
We weren't initially called out for a crime scene, but based off the broadcast, it's any responding officer in the nearby area respond to help.
Do you recall approximately what time you heard that on the radio?
Approximately 2:13 in the afternoon.
Now, I think you indicated, but if you didn't, are you aware whether that was at 411 West Mill Road in Washington Township?
It was at 411 West Mill Road, Washington Township.
And do you recall approximately what time you got to that scene?
Approximately 2:30 in the afternoon.
Had you ever been to that location before?
No.
When you arrived, can you tell members of the jury what you saw first?
When I arrived on scene, I saw numerous law enforcement officers from the Washington Township Police Department and also surrounding towns, numerous emergency medical services, and when I pulled up to the driveway, I got out, I saw Mr. Barisone on the, near the white trailer, and Mr. Goodwin by one of the police cars, and Miss Canrenek was being uploaded onto a stretcher.
Did you know who all those people were before you arrived?
No.
And are you familiar with them based on your involvement in the investigation?
Based on my involvement with the investigation, yes.
Now, you indicated that you saw an individual you just said was Michael Barisone.
Yes.
Do you see that person in court today?
Yes.
Could you identify that person for the record by an article of clothing they're wearing?
A white shirt.
I'll stipulate he's identified by fire.
All right, very good. The witness has identified the defendant, Michael Barisone, for the record. Continue, Mr. Schellhorn.
Thank you, Judge. Now, you indicated that he was by a white trailer.
Yes.
Do you recall what he was wearing when you arrived?
I do not recall exactly what he was wearing, but I do know that, I don't know if he was wearing his clothing at the time, but some of his articles of clothing were removed by emergency medical services.
Did you recover during the course of processing the crime scene some of those items or articles of clothing?
Yes.
Were medical personnel actively attending to the defendant,
Yes.
as well as to Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
And I think you said Ms. Canarek as well.
Yes.
Based on that, by the time you arrived on the scene, how would you describe it?
It was very hectic, being that the circumstances of the situation. There was a lot of people in and out of the scene, and yes, I responded as a law enforcement officer, but being that I am crime scene minded, I did notice our direct scene, which was in that driveway area, and started removing different personnel from that area that didn't need to be there. If they weren't tending to Mr. Barisone, Mr. Goodwin, they were removed from that direct area.
In a typical response to a crime scene or potential crime scene, what do you do first when you get there?
Make sure the scene is secured.
And why is that?
For the safety of any officer there, and to make sure that our evidence is preserved and the scene is preserved to the best of its ability.
Once a scene is secured, what would be the role of CSI thereafter?
We're then going to document. Photography is big. We can also sketching, like I said before. We're going to document the area and then start collecting evidence.
Is it fair to say in this particular case that you're familiar with the scene based on having processed it?
Yes.
Judge, I'd like to show Detective Bailey S-389, which has already been moved into evidence.
All right. 389 will be showed on the monitors in the courtroom.
Detective Bailey, the jury has already seen this several times. This is S-389, but I do want to ask you some questions about it. What do you recognize S389 to be a diagram of?
411 West Mill Road is the driveway area and patio, back patio.
And are certain things that are shown on this diagram, do they reflect items of evidence or observations that you made while you were processing the scene?
Yes,
Now, you had indicated previously that when you first got on scene, you saw the defendant receiving medical treatment in the area of a white trailer.
yes,
Do you see that area on this diagram?
yes.
Can you tell the jury where that is?
It's towards the front of the bottom of the TV, all the way to the left for, next to the pickup truck.
On the bottom?
On the bottom,
Where
on the bottom.
where
next
it
to the
says
pickup truck.
approximate location of suspect medical treatment?
Oh, yes, yes,
That's the arrow, is that the area you're talking about?
yes, right there.
And you indicated that Ms. Kanarak was also receiving medical treatment?
Yes,
Do you see that area where you observed that happening on this diagram?
yes, up by the table where it says approximate location of victim, medical treatment.
After you got on scene and had a chance to evaluate what the scene appeared to be, did you speak to anyone?
I spoke to numerous members of the Washington Township Police Department.
And why do you do that?
To gather some facts relating to the case and where our potential direct scene may potentially be.
That afternoon, you said that you responded to 411 West Mill Road, and you think you arrived there perhaps around 2:30 or by 2:30?
Yes.
What was the weather like on the afternoon of August 7, 2019?
When I arrived, it was your typical clear summer day, and within a half hour, it started getting very cloudy and started opening up to a downpour.
Do you recall approximately how long it downpoured for?
No, but it was around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:05 in the afternoon.
Did other members of the crime scene investigation unit participate in the investigation?
Yes.
And do you recall approximately how many individuals were participating?
Pretty much the entire unit at the time.
How large was the unit at the time?
9 detectives, I believe.
Thank you.
Are there different roles assigned or responsibilities assigned to the different detectives?
Yes.
How's that determined?
Basically, typically, it's with a sergeant. When the sergeant comes out from the particular unit that day, it was a corporal. He assigned all the other detectives, basically, their job roles for the investigation.
What was your assignment with this particular investigation?
I was the lead crime scene detective, so I was tasked with the photographs and evidence collection for the case and monitoring the entire case.
What was your understanding about the size of the property where you were?
It was a very large property.
Now, you just mentioned taking photographs at a scene.
Yes.
Can you describe that process for the members of the jury?
We start by taking overall photographs, so in this case, overall photographs of our direct scene in the house. Then we start working our way in to kind of close it down with mid-range and close-up photographs of different potential evidence. And then we start collecting evidence, and you'll see a close-up of the item in a bag that we collected in.
What would be the reason for taking those, what you call overall photos, and then the mid-range photos?
It's going to show us reference points as to where they're collected from. So we're going to kind of work our way in using different reference points, whether it's a house, an evidence marker, or another piece of evidence. We're going to use that to kind of work our way in and reference different items.
Now, you indicated that it started raining that afternoon around 3 o'clock or 3:05.
Yes.
When did you ultimately begin your overall processing of the scene in terms of your full documentation, photography, and evidence collection?
When it started raining and I saw raindrops coming, I realized I needed to load up a camera so we can accurately depict the scene and we can document what the actual scene is. And during my course of photographing, the rain started really coming down, which could have potentially damaged our scene. So that's when I definitely started taking photographs.
So
I also marked evidence as well, so we wouldn't lose it.
So with respect to the photographs, you took photos when it was starting to rain?
Yes,
And did that impact the way that the scene appeared in the photos from when you first arrived there?
yes.
And then you said that you also started marking some evidence. Can you explain that process to the jury?
So when I arrived, based off of how hectic the scene was, a lot of people in and out, maybe people didn't realize where there could potentially be crime scene evidence. Being that I'm crime scene minded, I got evidence markers and I threw them down actually over top of the evidence so we could preserve those, so nobody could potentially track evidence or track something into the scene or out of the scene. And then when it started raining, what I did was I covered the cell phones, all the electronic devices with plastic bags, and I used our paint cans, which we collect arson evidence in, fire debris, and I kind of dug them around different shell casings that were on the scene.
Is there a reason that you didn't just start processing and collecting the evidence when you saw it starting to rain?
Yes, we were waiting for a search warrant, but I knew that I had to document the scene.
Now, I think you indicated this before, but you also participated in collecting certain evidence from the scene.
Yes.
Can you explain what the general process is for a crime scene detective as you're actually collecting evidence?
So as we're collecting evidence, we're obviously wearing gloves. We are working up with a mid-range and a close-up photograph, and as we do collect the evidence, we're logging that on an evidence list with the date, the time, the item number, where the evidence is collected from. We're also putting that onto a evidence bag. When we collect it, it's gonna have the case number, the date, the time, a description of what the evidence is, and the initials of the officer that is collecting the evidence with a photograph.
Now, you indicated that you were the primary case detective for this investigation at the scene.
Yes.
Were there other detectives who were processing other areas of the property?
Yes.
Do you recall specifically what areas you processed on the afternoon or evening of August 7th, 2019?
Yes, I processed the direct main area of the scene, the inside of the house, and then up at the Dressage, the barn, the clubhouse area, and the office.
Judge, I had given Detective Bailey a stack of photos there that I can put those numbers on the record now. I don't believe there's any objection from counsel.
All right,
But it is a
give us,
lengthy-
let's run through the numbers of the photographs you want the witness to testify about.
S203 to S212. S214 to S2.
Hold on a sec. 206 is already in evidence, as is 214.
Some of these were used with other
Yes, okay.
officers. I just wanted the record to reflect the additional, rather than listing them one by one, Judge.
All right. So it's S203 to S212.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
214 to 217.
Mhm.
S220 to 222. S224 to 231. S234. S236 and 237. S239 and 240. S242 and 243. S250. S271 and 272. S277 and 278.
Should be what?
277 to 278. S287. S301 to S307. S312. S347 to 352.
What was that last set of numbers, please?
347 to 352.
All right, Mr. Bilinkas, have you seen all of those photographs?
Yes, Judge.
All right. And do you have any objection to those photographs being moved into evidence?
No, Judge, the only objection I have were the ones we discussed prior to after the inspection.
Right.
I don't believe any.
I don't think those were the ones mentioned. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that set of photographs will be admitted into evidence by stipulation of the parties. Again, normally a witness would have to look at each one and testify that it fairly accurately represents the image or the scene as he saw it and took the photograph. Just to speed things along a little bit, counsel have graciously acknowledged that those photographs do fairly accurately depict the scene as this witness saw it to be and photographed it. So all of those items will be moved, accepted in evidence. Some are already in evidence. So 203, 204, 205 will be admitted. 206 is already in evidence. 207, 208, 209, 210, 211, 212, 214 is already in evidence. 215, 16, 17 will be admitted. 220, 21, 22, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 229, 230, S230, S231 are already in evidence. S234, 236, 237, 239, 240, 242, 243 are admitted into evidence. 250 is already in evidence. 271, 272, 277, 278 are admitted into evidence. 287, 301 through 307 are admitted into evidence. And 312, and then 347 through 350, and 51 and 52. All of those items will be admitted into evidence, and they can be displayed with you as we move along through the testimony. All right, Mr. Schellhorn, thank you. Let's proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Bailey, I'm going to ask you to describe certain things about the crime scene now for the jury, and we'll use some of these photos to explain that. We're looking at S203. Have you seen that picture before?
Yes,
And I think this entire series of photos that we just talked about, you have in front of you in hard copy. You would agree with me that you took all those photos?
yes,
And they all fairly and accurately represent the scene of 411 West Mill Road on August 7, 2019, at some various points during your crime scene processing.
yes.
With respect to S203, what is this a picture of?
This is a picture of the residence.
And what angle or vantage point is this picture taken from with respect to the driveway or road?
This is from the driveway, going up the side of the house.
Looking to the right of the photo, what is that? What is that vehicle on the right side?
That is Mr. Barisone's vehicle, the silver vehicle.
Now, I think this is clear, or this should be obvious, but to make it clear for the record, what are the dots that are on the picture?
That's rain.
So you were taking these series of photographs at the time it was actively raining?
Yes,
Next, showing you what's been marked as S204. Do you recognize this picture?
yes.
Where is this picture taken on the property?
Behind the residence in the driveway by the back patio.
And we just looked at a picture that showed the side of the house and the pickup truck. Where would the pickup truck be in reference to this photo?
To the left.
Can you describe for the jury what the yellow placard with the number 2 in it represents in the center of the picture?
That's a piece of evidence that I marked based off of the circumstance of the scene, so we wouldn't lose it. It's actually over top of the piece of evidence.
And at the time that you put that placard down?
Yes,
At the time you put that placard down, was there already a puddle or standing water at that point?
no.
What is S205 a picture of?
It's a more of a mid-range of the two placard.
Meaning that you had identified a potential item of evidence in that location?
Yes,
And you marked it before it started raining?
yes.
Next, I'm showing you what's been marked as S206. Does that generally show the same area of the patio and the driveway?
Yes.
At the time when you first arrived on scene, aside from the rain and the puddles, at the time you first arrived on scene, is this generally how the scene appeared?
Yes.
Next, I'm drawing your attention to S207. What is S207 a picture of?
It's another area where there's evidence with a crime scene marker.
And did you put that crime scene marker there?
Yes,
Meaning that you identified a potential piece of evidence in that location?
yes,
When you put that marker down, had it started raining?
no.
What is on the top right of the corner of the picture?
Like a mulch, like a mulch pile, dirt pile.
I'm drawing your attention to S208. What is S208 a picture of?
It's the same piece of evidence with two markers next to it.
And what is the reason there are two markers on this piece of evidence?
Basically, it was, one of the markers was there covering the potential evidence, and then another one was put there so we know that there is a piece of evidence here, and that we're gonna be collecting that.
Did you know how hard or how much harder the rain would be that afternoon?
No,
And I should go back, well, I'll ask you this. This is S212. Is this a picture of the same area?
yes.
What is the significance of S212?
Now it's showing the area where, if you see the marker to the bottom left of the screen, there is a fire debris can over top covering that potential piece of evidence.
And was that the initial picture that you looked at of that piece of evidence where it was in standing water?
Can you re-ask that?
You just indicated there's a can over the top of that piece of evidence?
Yes.
With the number 2 placard on top of it?
Yes.
Was that the picture we just looked at a few minutes ago that was in a puddle or standing water?
Yes.
And so what was the reason for you going back and putting that over the top of it?
Kind of dug the can into the grass a little bit, into the ground, being that it's a gravel driveway, kind of grassy area, to try and, with the water, the amount of water that was coming through that area, to preserve that so it wouldn't wash away.
Next, I'm showing you what's been marked as S214. What's S214 a picture of?
It's the driveway with Mr. Barisone's truck.
And what's different about the time when this picture was taken versus that set of pictures we just looked at?
It's starting to get dark out.
By the time that you took this picture, had it stopped raining?
I believe so, yes.
What is S215 a picture of?
It's the same area with the Mr. Barisone's truck and the police car.
And would these pictures be considered overall photos, mid-range photos, or close-up photos?
Overalls.
Now, towards the bottom center of this photo, S215, what's the significance of the yellow placard that's in the grass there?
There's another potential piece of evidence located there.
Did you process that silver pickup truck?
Yes,
And did you search it?
yes,
Did you photograph it?
yes.
All right, this is S271 in evidence. What is S271 a picture of?
It's a picture of Mr. Barisone's truck.
And is this truck in the same position that it was when you first arrived on scene?
Yes.
What is S272 a picture of?
The logo of the rear passenger door of Barisone Dressage.
What is S281 a picture of?
It's a picture of in the bed of the truck, the container that was located in the bed of the truck.
And would that be one of those cargo type boxes that can sit in the bed of the truck and opens up to store various items?
Yes,
You searched that,
yes,
and this is a photograph of that
yes.
cargo container?
It's an overall photograph of that area, yes.
After you took overall photos of the entire area, did you begin to collect specific items of evidence?
Yes.
How do you determine what to collect as evidence?
We systematically process the scene and determine what is directly related to the scene that we have, based off the circumstances and the facts that we gather from other detectives or in this case, patrolmen on the scene.
Where did you begin collecting the evidence at the scene that we just discussed?
In the driveway.
And I'm going to show you a picture S209. What is S209 a picture of?
2 cell phones.
Do you recall if you took this picture early in the afternoon when it was, or earlier in the afternoon when it was starting to rain, or later in the afternoon after the rain had stopped?
It's still definitely raining in that picture.
And I think you had indicated that at least with certain evidence that was in the driveway, you marked it with placards and tried to identify those location of those items.
Yes.
Did you do anything with respect to other items that you saw at that outdoor scene that may appear to have been electronic devices?
Yes, plastic bags were either placed over top of them or they were placed into a plastic bag.
Judge, if I may have a moment?
Certainly.
May I approach, Judge?
Yes.
This is 184, 185, and 175. All right, Detective Bailey, you indicated that S209 is a picture of 2 cell phones.
Correct.
Where were those cell phones located by you?
At the base of the umbrella on the back patio.
And there's a plastic bag or 2 plastic bags next to those phones.
Correct.
Was that there when you got to the scene, or did you put those there?
I put those there
For what purpose?
to preserve evidence.
Starting with the phone on top, the black phone, do you see that item in front of you there? And it's marked as S175.
Yes.
What was, and I think you said this before, but what was the reason that you didn't collect it at the beginning of your processing and you put the plastic bags over the top?
We were still waiting for a search warrant at that time.
At some time later that afternoon, did you, or that evening, did you collect that item?
Yes.
And is that S175 in front of you?
Yes.
How do you recognize S175 to be the phone that you collected from that location?
It's in the bag that we collected it in.
And do you do anything to mark the bag or to identify an item of evidence so that you know that you collected it and you know where you collected it from?
Yes, the case number, the date, the time, the item number, the description of the item number, and my initials for collecting it.
And does that all match with the item that we're looking at in the picture of S209?
Yes. You want me to open it?
If you could just open it and show it to the jury. Thank you. Now, some of these items, Detective, after you collect an item of evidence and you put it into a bag, do you seal that bag?
Yes.
What's the purpose of sealing it?
So it's not tampered with.
Are some of the items that we're going to look at today items that you've seen since the day that you collected them?
Yes.
And have some of them been opened?
Yes.
Did you open some of them for follow-up processing?
Yes.
And are you aware whether with respect to, let's say, S-175, a phone, whether that was turned over to another agency for a forensic examination of the documents or the contents of the phone.
Yes, it was.
But is there anything, as you look at that phone, that appears to be in a substantially different condition than when you collected it on August 7th?
No.
All right, drawing your attention back to the photo of S-209, is there a second phone in that photo?
Yes.
What type of phone is that?
It's a white phone. I'm not sure the type off the top of my head.
And I think you have S-185 in front of you.
Yes.
Is S-185 appear to be the other phone in the picture?
Yes.
How can you tell that?
It's in the package that I put the case number, the date, the time, the item number, and a description of the item.
And what type of a phone is that?
This is a white iPhone.
And if you could open that phone and show that to the jury. Thank you, Detective. You can put that back in the bag.
Detective, what exhibit number is that, please?
This is S-185.
Oh, thank you.
And Judge, if I neglected to say this when I showed them to the detective, I am asking for permission to move S-175, S-185, and S-184 into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Bilinkas?
No, Judge.
All right, those items will be received into evidence.
Detective Bailey, did you collect any other phones from the area of the scene there in the back of the farmhouse?
Yes.
And do you recall where you collected that other phone from?
A patio table that was in the rear of the residence.
I'm showing you what's been marked into evidence as S-211. What is S-211 a picture of?
It's a white phone, white cell phone,
And where is the phone located?
on the patio table.
And again, just to make the record clear, when you arrived on scene, was that plastic bag over the top of that phone?
No,
Who put that plastic bag there?
I did,
And why did you put it there?
to preserve evidence.
Did you ultimately collect that phone that's shown in S-211?
Yes.
And I'm gonna ask you to refer to S-184, which is an envelope you have in front of you.
Yes.
Does that appear to be the same phone that you recovered from the table?
Yes.
What type of a phone is that?
It's a Google phone.
Thank you for showing that to the jury. After you collected those items of, those electronic devices at the scene, did you collect any articles of clothing?
Yes.
Starting with the photo S-242, what is S-242 a picture of overall?
It's a mid-range of the area just before the steps of the rear of the residence to enter the residence.
And is the area that we're looking at in S-42 shown in some of those prior photos that you took of the backyard and the back of the house?
It's in the overalls, yes.
In particular, in this photo, S-242, did you collect any items of evidence that are depicted in S-242?
Yes, a yellow sweatshirt and a red t-shirt.
And those are shown in the, I guess, the left-hand side of the picture there?
The left-hand side, yes.
Are those items in the same position that they were, at least at the time that you started processing the scene?
Yes.
Now, you indicated that when you got on scene, individuals were receiving medical treatment?
Yes.
And who was receiving medical treatment in this area?
Miss Kenrenack.
And do you recall if those are articles of clothing that were there at the time she was receiving medical treatment?
Yes.
Judge, I'm going to show S-182 and 183 to the detective.
All right.
Detective Bailey, before we get to those items, you indicated that it did rain that afternoon.
Yes.
Were you able to preserve or put something over the top of every item at the scene?
No.
With respect to the clothing, what was the state of the clothing at the time that you collected it?
It was absolutely saturated with water.
And is there any process that you would typically go through if you were collecting, for example, wet clothing?
Yes, we would photograph it, collect it, and then once we get it back to the crime lab, it would be placed into the drying chamber and dried out.
All right, I'm going to direct your attention first to S-182. You have that in front of you?
Yes.
And what do you recognize S-182 to be?
It's the bag I collected, a red and black shirt.
And does that bag appear to contain the same red and black shirt that's shown in S-242, the photo? Because I know I had said I was showing the detective S-182 and S-183. I would like to move those into evidence so that they can be seen.
All right, any objection, Mr. Bilinkas?
No, Judge.
All right, 182 and 183 will be accepted into evidence.
It'll take me a minute. This is the red shirt.
And Detective, you're holding up that red shirt. I see that there's a white piece of paper there.
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what the white piece of paper is?
The white piece of paper was used when we were processing the piece of evidence to determine if there was any defects in the clothing
And did you do that the night of the shooting or at a later date?
at a later date.
And after you do that, do you keep that white piece of paper there in the, in with the evidence?
Yes, for any potential trace evidence.
Now, you just held that up. Did you do anything during the course of collecting that shirt to change the condition of the shirt?
No.
And if you could hold it up again, and Judge, if I could ask that that be brought down to show to the jury members in the gallery?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, please. And Judge, just for the record, Detective Bailey just got to the end of the gallery and he did turn the shirt around to show the back on the way on his return.
All right, very good.
Detective, if you could just leave that there. Now, you indicated that it was, that item, for example, S-182, was soaking wet at the time that you recovered it?
Yes.
And you indicated that it was taken and processed in such a way that it would dry.
Yes.
Did you observe anything on that shirt, or can you describe the condition of the shirt?
It was very, very wet that day. It was cut from emergency medical services, and there are defects in the shirt.
And when you say defects, what does that mean?
When I say defects, a bullet defect.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as S-349. When you indicated that you had opened this at a later time and processed it, did you take photos of that?
Yes.
And you indicated that you used a white piece of paper that's there inside the evidence bag during that processing?
Yes.
What is S-349 a picture of?
It is a picture of two bullet defects.
And if you could just identify for the jury where those defects appear specifically on the picture.
There's a bullet defect just below the white collar, on like the grayish, the dark part of the shirt. Then just to the right, down a little ways, is another bullet defect.
And I know this is a lot of back and forth, but I'm gonna ask the judge if you can come down and just point it out for the jury.
Yeah, just point it out on the screen, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah,
Judge.
go ahead.
Your first bullet defect right here, and your second bullet defect.
Can you come point it out on this other screen for the jurors who are in the gallery? Thank you.
First bullet defect up here by the collar, second bullet defect.
Thank you, Detective. You can sit down. When you indicate first bullet defect or second bullet defect, are you saying that that is the order that those defects occurred, or are you just identifying them separately as 1 and 2?
Identifying them separately as 1 and 2.
Now, I'm gonna draw your attention to S348. What is that a picture of?
Those are 2 exit bullet defects.
And again, I think, well, I guess that's why you put the white piece of paper into the picture?
Yes.
And I think it should be clear, but just in case anyone on the jury is having a hard time seeing it, could I ask you to come down and point out those 2 defects on the picture?
Bullet defect and bullet defect.
Thank you. And if you could point out on the second screen.
Bullet defect and bullet defect.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions about this particular item of evidence. I can certainly keep going. We have other items to go through, but I know we won't finish with Detective Bailey today. So-
All right. Do you plan on showing him photographs of the other item collected?
I do, as well as having him point those defects
All
out.
right. Well, since we're sort of in that general area, why don't we do that? And then once you're finished, that will be a logical point to break.
Excellent,
All
thank you,
right,
Judge.
go ahead.
Detective Billy, if you could put that S-182, that shirt, back into its bag. I'm going to ask you next about S-183. All right, Detective, you have S-183 in front of you. What do you recognize that to be?
Bright yellow sweatshirt, the bag that I collected it in.
And again, if I direct your attention to the screen, S-243, what's that a picture of?
That's a picture of both the red shirt and the yellow sweatshirt.
And is that the same condition that you located them in and photographed them in before you actually collected them as evidence?
Yes.
All right, I'll ask if you could open S-183. And Detective Bailey, I see you just held up a white piece of paper. Did you process this item the same way that you processed the red and black t-shirt?
Yes.
Meaning that you removed it from the bag at some point, you took photos of it with that white piece of paper?
Yes.
And can you tell the jury again the purpose of that white piece of paper?
The white piece of paper is to help distinguish any type of defect that may be in an article of clothing or on an item.
Before I have you show that to the jury, I'm going to show you what's been marked as S-350 in evidence. What's that a picture of?
That's a picture of the yellow sweatshirt.
And is this photo taken at the time that you were processing it
Yes.
in the way you just described?
Yes.
What is, this is the front of the sweatshirt?
That's the front of the sweatshirt.
I'm showing you what's been marked as S351. What is that a picture of?
It's a picture of the inside of the sweatshirt. Far right to the top of the screen is the front of the sweatshirt with a bullet defect. Then if you come down to the center of the screen, you have an exit defect in the back of the sweatshirt. And then to the left of the screen is another exit defect in the back of the sweatshirt.
And I see that there are some sort of black objects in there. What are those?
That's just from the potential getting shot, sitting in the rain, sitting in the dirty water, not ballistic related.
I'm sorry, are they black plastic markers?
Oh, yes, black plastic markers.
And can you tell the jury, did you put those there? What's the significance of those?
Yes, they're there to help point out where we see defects.
And you're holding the sweatshirt now.
Yes.
And you just hold that up. It's obviously a little bit harder to see in these pictures. If I could help the detective hold this one up. because
Sure.
The nature of the, Detective, I'm gonna hold this for you and ask you if you can point out for the jury where those defects are.
Mr. Schellhorn, might I suggest you do it down
Yes,
here, and
Judge.
maybe all the jurors can see it?
So in the front of the sweatshirt, we have a defect right here, an entrance defect. You're only gonna see one. It is my opinion that the sweatshirt was actually open at the time that it was struck with a bullet. So you see the one right next to the
Judge, again, I object to him
patch.
testifying with regards to the.
Stand when you object, Mr. Bilinkas, please. What's the nature of your objection?
I object to him testifying with regards to what he believes regarding where the sweatshirt was and so forth. Again, I don't think he's qualified to do that. He hasn't been qualified.
All right, Mr. Schellhorn, he went through his training. He hasn't been qualified as an expert to render an opinion.
No, Judge.
So
I agree.
I sustain the objection. All right, ladies and gentlemen, just disregard that last comment from the detective about what he believed happened.
Is this a pullover sweatshirt or a zip sweatshirt?
Zip up.
Do you know if the victim was wearing this open or closed at the time of the shooting?
No.
If you could just go ahead and point out that bullet defect again for the members of the jury on the front of the sweatshirt.
Right by the patch right here.
And then I'll show you, again, we're looking at the S351 is a picture that's up on the screen. Can you point out for the jury where the bullet defects appear on the inside of the sweatshirt?
The inside, there's one here. And then right here.
And you're indicating the two defects that would appear on the picture, the first from the left and the second from the left.
Yes.
And where would the defects be in 351 that's on the far left of the picture?
Far left, be right here.
I'm sorry, far left of the picture.
That side?
So if I'm holding it up, the left. I'll give that back to you. Thank you, Detective. Judge, I don't think I have any further questions about this evidence at this time.
All right, very good. It seems like a logical point in time to break, members of the jury, so we're going to take our evening recess now. It's a little bit after 4:30. Please don't discuss the case with each other or anyone else. You're going to hear me say that repeatedly at the end of the day. And we'll see you back here. Try to get to the courthouse around 8:30 or so. I want to start as close to 9 as we can, and once I know that all the jurors have assembled, we'll be ready to proceed. Counsel will, of course, be here by no later than 8:30, hopefully before, in case there's items we have to discuss in the morning. All right, thank you, members of the jury. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Enjoy your evening. Oh, you may step down.
Thank you, sir.
Should I remain on the record?
No, I think you can turn it off.
Judge, I know we discussed at a break about my office keeping custody of the firearm, even though it's been moved into evidence.
I'm
Do
sorry.
you want me to keep these other
Yeah,
items?
hold on, put it on the record, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Go down to the second floor. Hold on, hold on.
Do you want my office to keep these other items that we just identified and moved in the clothing, Judge?
Yes. Clothing and the gun you can keep. Thank you.
Go down the elevator right there, to the second floor. Go all the way around to the store courtroom is.
Counsel, one other thing I noticed, when my staff is administering the oath to a witness, please don't move around, don't talk. Just let them administer the oath, okay? Thank you.
Your Honor,
Yes.
did Your Honor reach out to another judge?
No. Yes, I will do it. What's the name of the witness again?
So the name of the witness is Sean Cullen, C-U-L-L-E-N, and I have the judge's name and phone number if that'd be helpful.
I know Judge Ali.
Okay.
I'll reach out to him now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Schellhorn,
Yes, Your Honor.
I understand that laser pointer can be charged by way of computer, I believe? Yeah.
We have the witnesses here tomorrow.
Yeah.